Now that we've got our bookshelf drawn in SketchUp, we've got to bring it to VCarve Pro. So SketchUp does all the modeling, VCarve does all of the programming of the router. I want to clean this drawing up just a little bit. So if I've got any of these guidelines that's still out here, I want to get rid of them. And I want to get rid of the ukulele guy because we do not need to cut him out on the CNC router. So I got my parts here. Now I'm going to save it one last time so I get I'm going to purge all the extra stuff. So I have the bookshelf saved in its entirety, and these are all of the parts that I want to cut out. Oh, and I'm just remembering we got one more part that we want to cut out on the CNC router, and that's going to be the adjustable shelf. So let's draw that quickly. To draw this, I am going to just put a rectangle right on top of the shelf there. Because they're components, I'm going to pull that out 0.75, and then I'm going to double click on this to make it a component. I'm going to call it adjustable shelf. Say OK. Now you can probably figure out that if I use that adjustable shelf, or I made that adjustable shelf the exact same size as the inside of that opening, it's going to rub and be very difficult to change. So what I would like to do is edit this in a little bit easier route. So to do that, I'm going to click on it, hit the move tool, hit control so I get the plus on there. Then I'm just going to pull another one of these out. So remember, since it's a component, if I edit this component, whatever I do to this is going to do to that. So I'm going to give myself 1/8 of an inch of clearance. So I'm going to push this in 0.125. And on the front to back, I'm going to give myself a little bit more, 1/4 inch of clearance. And then I just like to click the select tool and I click someplace else. Then I can delete that. And now this is good enough to make. You can see there's a little gap there and there's a little gap here. If I was going to try to make a really nice presentation for a customer, or if I wanted to turn it in, I would probably just move this up a little bit. Yeah. Do my best to move it up there. Then I can try to make it look like it's adjustable. If I really wanted to line it up on a shelf pin, I could do it something like that. It's not that big a deal. And I'm going to save that again because I added that shelf. All right, so now I'm ready to take these parts and program them in VCarve Pro. So what I've got to do is download an SKP file. So this is the exact same way that if I was going to bring this into the desktop version of SketchUp, I would. I'm essentially turning this into the desktop version of SketchUp. So download SKP and do a 2018 version. VCarve Pro likes the older versions of SketchUp better, and it works better with them. So download it as a 2018 version and say OK. And you'll see it's going to download right here, and that's actually downloaded to my download folder. And it's OK to be there for now, but we would have some issues if we left it there too long. So now I'm going to find VCarve Pro and open that up. Okay, so now VCarve Pro is opening up and I want to create a new file. So these are pretty specific directions that you want to follow to make sure that your stuff is going to land on there. The first thing I need to do is set up the board size that I'm going to cut my parts out of. And I'm just going to assume that it's a full sheet of plywood. So the width of a full sheet of plywood is 48 inches wide and 96 inches tall. It's 3/4 thick, and we're going to run this from the machine bed, and we want the XY position to be the bottom left corner. And these don't matter. This is just for what this looks like in the 3D view, so we can just skip that, and we're going to say OK. So now that white page or that white screen that we see, that is the 4x8 sheet of plywood. We're only cutting one of these out, but it's kind of a fun game of Tetris or a puzzle to see how many I could get on here. So if we were a company mass producing these, if you were able to squeeze out an extra part on a sheet and we making thousands of them, it would wind up saving a company a lot of money. So that's kind of nice to see the whole sheet. My next step is to get the drawing in here. So I want to import vectors. And I know that mine is in my downloads, the SKP file. So I'm going to say open. Now this is a really important page. We're going to use a 3/8 thick router bit to cut the parts out. So we want the gap between the parts to be at least 1/2 inch. Auto orientate largest face is up. That's great. SketchUp is kind of funny, and SketchUp doesn't actually do arcs. It does tiny little line segments, but VCarve does arcs. And so this is saying if we do have any circles, can VCarve actually turn them into circles so it's not just a bunch of line segments, and we're okay with both of those. Group imported parts is fine. Keep components starting, that's great. Uncheck this last box, replace all outer boundaries. If we do that, we lose our dados and rabbits. And then if we did a good job cleaning up SketchUp, we can keep import all visible data and file. That would mean like if we kept the guy, it's going to bring the guy in and we're going to cut him out of the CNC router. And that's fine to leave that. We can always delete it in VCarve. And then we say, okay. So VCarve is as smart as you are. It doesn't understand grain direction. It doesn't understand layout. And so we get to do that for it. So if I'm trying to identify the parts here, obviously these are my sides. This is my bottom shelf. This is the adjustable shelf. And these are the two stringers. So the first thing that I want to do is lay this out so that I can get 4 of these on one page. And to do that, I'm going to rotate these 90 degrees. So I can hit Control 9 after I highlighted them, and it will rotate them 45 degrees at a time. Then if I click on each of these, I can just use my arrow keys to move them. We want the grain to be going this way anyhow. So this works out just fine. So we'll plan on you guys kind of taking up a whole row. We'll give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room. It makes a little bit of the design work easier if they're not right on top of each other. Get this one off the bottom just a hair. Okay, now we got to start inside out. So we don't want to cut the parts all the way through first because then they're going to move on the router. We want to do all of the inside machine work first. And so let's start with these holes. You'll notice when I click on one part, the whole part is selected. We want that to not happen. So I'm going to right click on here and say ungroup objects back to original layer. Ungroup objects back to original object layer. So now if I click on one part, it only selects that one part. VCarve will often bring in extra rectangles. So I can see if I click on this right now that it's actually got another rectangle inside of here, and we don't want that. So we're just going to delete it. I'm going to check all of these. So when I click here, you can see that dashed purple line. We don't want that. That's okay. We don't want that one. And we don't want that one. Now we got to think about how a router works. A router uses a spinning cutter. Think of it like a pencil that spins. Okay, so this thing is spinning. If it's spinning and we're trying to cut out the inside of here with the spinning disc or spinning bit, we're not going to be able to get the corners. So what we do with these dados is we overcut them. So I'm going to grab the move tool here, and I'm just going to grab the ends of these and pull it out a little bit further. Because if I've got a spinning cutter head and it stops right here, it's not going to cut out the corners, but if it goes all the way to the end, it will. So all of these dados, whoops, if you accidentally move it, Control Z undoes it. Did it again. Zoom in a little bit further. Make sure you just select the rabbit or the dado. And then we got to get these rabbits too. Okay, so all those have been overcut. So now we got to tell the router bit which router bit to use for, or the router which bit to use. So let's first select these dados. We're going to cut these all out with the same bit. So, oh, I accidentally selected too much. I'm holding down Shift, and I can select more than one at a time. Make sure you're just selecting those now. And then we're going to come over here to Toolpath. Move this out of the way. So in Toolpath, we want to do a pocket toolpath. That cuts out everything between the two lines. And we want the depth to be 1/4 of an inch. That's right. And we're going to remove the tools so we can start with nothing. And we're going to say select. Now I've got some tools built in here already. It's a 3/8 bit that we want to use, a 3/8 end mill. If you don't have any of this in here, what you're going to want to do is add one. So I'm going to hit add end mill, and then we're going to edit the name of it. So we're going to call it a 3/8 end mill and say okay. Tool type is an end mill. The diameter is 0.375. Now if you've got one over here already, like I have one, I'm just doing this for your benefit. And then create settings. So pass step, we can cut as deep as the bit is wide. So 0.375. Whoa. Step over that's fine. 18,000 is fine. Feed rate, we're going to go 250 inches a minute. Plunge rate will go to 40 or so. And this is in tool 1. That tool 1 is really important. That's the first tool on the router bit. It's tool 1. We're going to say apply and select. For whatever reason, that usually closes it. So I'll come back to toolpath. I see that selected. These are good. We want to ramp plunge moves 1 inch. That means the bit doesn't come straight down on it. The bit comes in at an angle. No pocket allowance. And let's call this dado. And calculate. And then it switches to a 3D view and it shows us what those are going to look like when they get cut out. That's fine. So I'll go back to the 2D view. Now I want to select these rabbits here. So I select that one and that one. So I'm going to close this and I want another pocket tool path. Now that's only a 1/4 inch deep wide rabbit. So if I use a 3/8 wide bit, it's going to cut it too wide. So I want to remove this and we're going to select the 1/4 inch end mill. And if you don't have one in there, you can create it just like we did before. These are the settings that we want to use. Pass depth, that's right. Spindle speed is good. Feed rate is good. Plunge rate is good. But this is in tool number 2. So we want to say tool number 2 now and apply. So this is in the next tool bank over. And it closes it for whatever reason. Ramp plunge moves 1 inch. And we're going to call this rabbit. Okay, and now it shows that those rabbits, boom, boom, got added in there. Beautiful. Okay, now we want to do the holes. So I'm going to draw a box around these holes. Hold down Shift. Draw a box around those holes. Close the preview. And we are going to do a drilling tool path now. So the drilling tool path, this is good. We want it to cut at 0.4. The tool is going to be a 5mm drill. So I'm going to select drills and I'm just going to make a new one just so you can see. We're going to call this, and it's going to be a 5mm drill bit. Say okay, the tool type is a drill. 5mm wide. That angle you can leave at 90. 2, create settings. Spindle speed is good. Plunge rate is good. Tool number 3. So we're going to do 3 tool changes so far. Apply and select. So we got that. Shows right. We don't need to do peck drilling, is when it'll go. It comes out, goes down, comes out, goes down. We don't need to drill 1, that's fine. Calculate. And you can kind of see these little black dots are the holes. The red is just the tool path that it's taking to get there. We're good with that. Okay, now we got all the interior machining done. Now we're going to go to the outside perimeter stuff. So let's go here first. Now I want to be really careful. When I click on this, I want to make sure it's cutting all the way around the outside, and that one is good. Click on this, make sure that pink line is cutting all the way around the outside. That's good. We're going to select these ones and these ones. We're going to hold off on those just yet. We're going to do something different with those. So I'm going to close these, and now we're going to come all the way over here to a profile tool path. So this takes a line and cuts around the line. Start depth, that's good, 0. The cut depth is 0.755. So our material is 0.75 thick. 0.755 means it's going to cut all the way through our material, 5/1000ths of an inch. And to do that, we want to use the same 3/8 end mill that we created earlier. And we're actually going to say do it in one pass. Okay? Now this is important. This says, do we want the router bit to go on the outside of our lines, the inside of our lines, or on our lines? We have to be on the outside or our parts are going to be too small. We're going to add a ramp, and we're going to call this outside calculate. I get a warning saying it's going to cut all the way through my parts, and I'm okay with that. Okay, it looks like we're cutting all the way around the outside. That's great. Now the last ones, I'm going to spread these out just a little bit. We're going to do something very similar. We're going to do a profile tool path. It's only 755, the same. We're going to do it in one pass. Okay, outside is good, but we're going to add these tabs. So the tabs are going to be a 1/2 inch long. We're going to make them a 16.0625. With small pieces, that router will throw them out. When it cuts through, it'll catch the bit. The vacuum's not powerful enough to suck it down. It'll send it flying. So with a thickness of 0.0625, it's going to leave just a little bit of wood there to hold them in place. And we're going to say edit so we know where to go. Tab length and thickness must be greater than 0. Well, let's make a 0.125. I don't like skinny tabs. And we're going to click here, here, here. So we want 3 of these tabs on each piece. And close. So these little yellow spots is where it's going to leave that little tab so it doesn't go flying off. Do the ramp. 1 inch is good. I'm going to call these stringers. It's going to cut all the way through. We're okay with that. So it's kind of confusing to look at the 3D view here. So I'm going to click back on toolpath. I'm going to change the speed to about 1/2. And I'm going to say preview all toolpaths. And we're going to get to see what it's going to look like for the router to cut these out. There it's doing the rabbits. Picks up, moves and does that rabbit. Now it does the holes. Now it's cutting around all the way through the outside. Cutting around the outside. Now it's cutting those. And you can see if you zoom in on here, those are cut all the way through. It's kind of hard to navigate these, but those are leaving those little tabs. So we can confirm, we can zoom in and out and see that yes, this does indeed look good. So the last thing that we want to do is think about the bits that we're using so it does as few changes as possible. If we remember, the dado uses a 3/8 bit, rabbit uses a 1/4 inch bit, drill uses a 5mm, then we go back to the 3/8 cut. So I'm actually going to move this down so it makes 1 fewer tool changes. We start with the 1/4 inch bit, go to the 5mm, then we go to the 3/8 and we finish on 3/8. If we want to see how long this is going to take, it says it's going to take us about 4 minutes to cut all of this out. All right, so what I want you to do now is this is all done. We're going to go File, Save As, save it in your network drive. My network drive is not showing up here, but find the file that says your name. I'm just going to put mine in downloads, and here's how I'm going to label this file. Your initials, and then what block you're in, and then hit Save. And then you're going to go back to our Canvas page. and you're going to see right on here, VCarve file drop for bookshelf. You are going to click on this, and it's going to look different for me because I don't have an upload feature. I'm not a student, but there'll be an upload file button, and you'll upload that file that you just saved right there because I want to check out your file before we run it through the CNC router. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You're going to do a great job. This is going to be awesome.